Greetings, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Let's Talk Family. Today, I have the pleasure of ending the year. Yes, this is my last show for the year, but I have the pleasure of ending the year with a salute to veterans, talking about the military. And this is my second panel discussion, so we'll see how that goes. But since we have a panel and there's a few people, we'll jump right into introductions. So I will bring them on and let them introduce themselves, and then we'll get on to the topic discussion. But before we go any further, feel free to like, share, and comment throughout, and we will definitely get to your questions and your comments throughout the show. All right, so without further ado, let's first introduce Kelly.
Hi there, I'm Kelly Rodriguez, 21-year retired veteran of the U.S. Army. I still do live in Fayetteville, North Carolina. I retired out of Fort Bragg 4 years ago, and since my son is still serving in 82nd, I am still here. I have 3 sons and a grandson. Worked as a VA benefits advisor for a little while, but I just re-entered the civilian workforce as the general manager of a Tommy's Express car wash, so kind of starting a new adventure. I'm kind of looking forward to tonight. It's going to be fun.
All right, welcome. We are looking forward to having you. And next, let us introduce the First Lady, Erika.
Hi, I'm the First Lady Erika. I was in the U.S. Army as a medical lab technician. I served over in Germany. It was a wonderful trip. And when I had my son in 2006, that's when I decided to hang it up. After that 4 years, that was enough. I wanted to spend time with my baby. And eventually I went on to be a lab tech again in the U.S., at the VA hospital. So I served at the VA hospital, retired from there. And now I'm, making my own products, doing resin and different kinds of artwork, and just filling my time with that and enjoying the passion behind that. I have a few books, book projects that I've worked on. I've done vision board books and vision board classes and collaborations with other women, and that's what I'm doing now.
Welcome. As always, glad to have you. Now we will introduce Joe. Welcome, Joe.
Thank you. Joe Martin. I am U.S. Army. 4 years. I got out of the military in 1971. 82nd Airborne Division, 1st Cavalry Division in Vietnam. Right now, I'm working on as a Combat Veterans Group in Washington, D.C. I'm also a part of the Washington, D.C. Mental Health Advisory Committee. Just doing what I can to help veterans.
All right, it is a pleasure to have you on. Joe, we're going to need you to move your camera up just a little bit because we can't see the top of your head. The other way. There we go. Right there. That's perfect. And next, we have Mr. Randy Traxler. Randy, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Randy Traxler. I'm a 20-year Army veteran from the field artillery community. I retired about 2 months ago. I've just been kind of living and enjoying life, trying to figure out what I'm going to do now that I've grown up a little bit. I spent a lot of time working with veterans at their local VFW, as well as managing my own renovation company.
Get into the topic of discussion. All right, so as you know, Let's Talk Family mostly deals with issues and things pertaining to the family. So since we have a bunch of veterans on here and we're all Army now, I might be a little biased. It was not intentional. I tried to reach out to other people in other branches, but the Army was the only one that showed up as things, right? So let's first start off by talking about, we've all have families and we all have the adjust our family life to the Army. So what were some of the adjustments, or matter of fact, what were some of the benefits of being in the military and having a family?
For me, it provided a way of life for my family. I was dual military for a long time, and neither one of us were college educated, but yet we were able to give all three of our sons a good life, education for them, education for us. So, I mean, really, it was a great career choice. I learned a lot. I learned about myself, and the biggest thing I've learned now, for the first time, even though I've been out for 4 years, is how well it does translate to the civilian workforce as far as leadership, management. As long as you can get all the crazy Army military stuff out, it really does translate well. So it's benefited me, honestly, for 25 years now.
Wow, wow, wow. Anybody
Yeah.
else?
Yeah, I agree with Kelly, right? So I was dual military for a long time. My wife also being a veteran. But the biggest thing was where I grew up in Michigan, we went from struggling every day to survive to where now I'm thriving, my children are thriving, my wife is thriving. And it's through those skills that we pick up along the year, all the benefits and just everything. Like, it's really hard to quantify the amount of benefit that you get from your service. It doesn't matter if it was, just a one contract or all the way to retirement like Kelly and I. There's just so much to be gained along the way.
Right, right. Erika, you got anything?
Well, I didn't have a family when I first joined, but the thing was, it took me from being like a wanderer, even at age 28 when I joined really late. I was a wanderer. I wasn't really focused, but I knew that this was something I wanted to do ever since I was 18. And then at 28, I stopped listening to what everybody else said and I just did it. And the biggest thing, I mean, there was financial counseling, things that I never thought about before that it was introduced to me. I got to see the world, and all of that just goes towards preparing you for your family. So by the time I had my son and came home, I sowed those oats. I would, travel and learn, and I became like fiscally responsible because of it.
Right.
And then, and I'm saying that because I had a little situation where I was late with my little AFES card payment, and my sergeant found out, and I got written up, and I had to go take financial classes, and I was like, "Oh, I didn't know we could invest our check in this, and I didn't know that, they had Step Up at the time, so you could add to your GI Bill." And so, though a lot of benefits when I got out, you know, VA loan, to get the first home, and yeah, it did a lot. It did a lot. It reshaped me.
Yeah. Now, I saved Joe for last because, those of us that recently been in within this last 20 years or so, we've seen the Army transform, but Joe was in during Vietnam. So
Mm.
the focus on the family wasn't as strong then as it is now. So, Joe, tell us some of the benefits that you had being in the military.
Most of my benefits I saw after I got out the military. Like the young lady before me, I did not have any children, any wives, or anything prior to my ETS date, which is in November 1971. So all my benefits came afterwards. I did go to school. I did buy a home. And right now, like I said, I'm working with veterans because I have what they call PTSD, as you all are familiar with, I'm quite sure. So I got to go through changes. I meet with the group every week, actually. We didn't have phones or
Mm.
computers that we were able to call home and see our families with. We didn't have those back then. We could write on anything and mail it, but we didn't have anything to communicate directly with our families.
Wow.
Um, I do know, I think I mentioned this story to you the other day. I got hurt in Vietnam, and when I got hurt, no one told my mother about it, but she felt it. And she called the Red Cross and said, something's going on. She didn't know what it was. So before I knew I was in my hospital bed, a captain came up with a person from the Red Cross and asked me if I was Sergeant Joseph Martin. I said, yes, I am. It hopped on me for not contacting my mother. I said, I'm in the hospital, My point is, talking about family, my mom's felt this. That's a mother's love.
Yes.
Yeah,
You
it's
know,
It's interesting. That's my son is why I retired when I retired. Talking about like how connected you are. My son, we were in the Army at the same time. We'd actually pass each other running PT on Ardennes and Long Street.
wow.
Yeah, I know, right?
That's crazy.
It was pretty crazy. But when he got orders to Afghanistan at the time, he was in 11 Bravo. He was infantry, and he was going to Helmand Province. And this is in 2017. And of course, you know, we'd never held Helmand, and I was in 44th Medical Brigade, and all my mind was thinking is I could deploy and be there with him. And
Mhm.
so that's when I decided 21 years was enough for me. I dropped my packet right after he got his orders,
Wow.
and so yeah, it's kind of crazy how much there's just no that's where the line was drawn. I was like, we can serve together, but not anymore.
It's funny you say that because by the time I knew my retirement was coming around the time I hit 20 years, my son was a preteen. And I kept saying, I need to be home to raise my teenage son.
Mhm.
You know, I need to be there just in case somebody got to jack him up. I wanted to be me. You know, let's just be honest.
Yeah.
You know, we boys seem to be a little hothead and a little hard headed, and I want to be there. I did not want my wife dealing with that, and so he was the major factor for me getting out of the military,
Yeah,
retiring outside
same
of my
same
retirement.
here. You know, I have a 14-year-old and a 17-year-old daughter, and you know, seeing them through pictures on deployments,
Yeah,
right, in Korea, it's not the same, right? And I know that I can't go back and fix some of those times that I missed. I can't go to the first recital, the first dance, but I can be there to help usher them into adulthood and give them some life lessons now that maybe their ears are open a little bit more. They're set up. They don't have to, like when I first came in the Army, because I came from a place of struggle, I had a chip on my shoulder. And throughout the years and the different training, like the resiliency training that you and I went through, you know, that opened up a new perspective, and I can take all those skills and help set them up for success as they, you know, leave my house. And the only way to do that was to be here every day, you know. So I get up and I take them to school, I pick them up, you know, we go, I take them to work now because of course they're of working age. But yeah, I don't think I could do it for a couple more years and miss those
right.
final moments. I missed enough. I had to be home for them.
Yeah. So one of the things that I always said throughout my military career was when I'm home, I'm dad. When I walk in the house, I'm dad. It doesn't matter what's going on at work. Until I became a senior NCO, I was able to live by that. But I still managed it. Still, when I'm home, I'm dad. So, what were some of the things that you did to maintain your family life while you were in?
Mm. It's interesting that you just said that, Warren, because I had not the same experience. When I
Mm,
came home from work, I would still be in my uniform usually until about 8 o'clock, but I was cooking dinner, doing homework, and doing all
Mm.
of those things. And the phone rings, you stop being mom for a minute, then you got to go back to being Sergeant Rod. And it was stressful. I'm not gonna lie.
yeah.
I couldn't just be mom when I got well as a senior NCO. Of course, little backstory, I didn't become a mother until I was 28. So my first 10 years in the Army, I was single, deploying, volunteering for deployments, and then I married a single father. Um,
Wow.
he was a Green Beret. We actually met in Afghanistan, so I guess I can say thank you to the Army for my family in general. But so by the time I actually had kids, I had a 10-year-old, a 7-year-old, and a newborn, you know, and I was a staff sergeant. So it really never, it was constantly switching hats. I really felt like that.
Wow, that's interesting.
I would have loved to just been mom when I got home, but
Yeah, I don't think it's that easy for a lot of us to
anymore.
do that.
Well,
You know,
I
I was
think
so
too because you
dedicated.
were dual military, right, Randy?
Yeah. My
I
wife
think
was an
that's another
engineer.
thing.
Yeah. So, I mean, we would have our moments where we tried to be just mom, just dad, but you know, while we were both wearing the uniform, we couldn't because when we were together, we were both staff sergeants.
See?
And I mean, I was a platoon sergeant as a staff sergeant, right? So I'm in charge of an entire firing platoon, and I have 16 or 17 individuals who, you know, something happens, they got to call me. So I
So,
never really got to take the hat off or the uniform off really at home.
So, Randy, with you and your wife both being in the military, did you have to make a special arrangement for your children in case of deployment and things like that?
Yeah, so the Army has a family care plan. So if you have dual military or now single parents, you have to have a short-term provider and a long-term provider. The problem with that is where the Army is very people first strategically,
Right.
sometimes on the ground that message isn't communicated well,
Right.
especially in relation to the mission. So
Or
there were plenty
executed
of
well.
times where, one of the kids would need something and they're like, well, can't your wife do it? No, sorry, she's,
It's,
in the field,
it's
or
the
she's
battle of
out
whose
on
week is
mission,
it
or
to do
she's doing
appointments.
something. Like, I'm
Mhm.
still a parent too. And then she would have the same thing. At her unit, she'd be like, oh, I need to take, the kid's sick. I have to pick him up from daycare. We have to get a doctor's note. And they'd be like, well, can't your husband do it? No, he's in the field, or he's deployed, or he's like,
Yeah.
it was a weird kind of juxtaposition between strategic Army and what's on the ground. But
This
our
is
kids are good. They're thriving. They love us. They're both members of the VFW auxiliary, even, so they volunteer and give their time back to the veteran community. So all things considered, they came out ahead, and I think it's in part due to the flexibility my wife and I had.
it's this wonderful thing, but then it's like you said, it's difficult, like you said, juxtaposition. So when I came in as a female, I saw lots of women who came in and they were like, be lucky you don't have kids. And they were like, they would tell me things like that. And what I saw was single moms who had to sign over custody of their children, and they didn't get the equal pay that a married man or a man would get because they signed over their kids. They didn't get that same dependent pay. It was reduced. And so when I got pregnant, I saw the difficulty I had just with PT having, being sick. I was sick. And they, instead of going to PT, instead, my sergeants made
What
me
is
sit
PT?
in the
What is PT? We gotta get out of these Army.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Instead of being able to go to formation or to go to the meeting in the morning and run and jog with everybody else and do the exercises, instead they made me just come sit in an empty clinic by myself because they felt like, oh, well, we don't want you to just sit home. But I was to the point where if I bent over, if I tried to brush my teeth, everything was making me nauseous. So I just saw how I was being treated as a pregnant person, and I just said, you know what, I saw what they did to the, some people where they have to sign over custody, which I was married, but I would still, if my son is sick, I want to be the one to go home. I want to be the one with him. I want to be able to breastfeed. I want to be able to do all those first. So going in at 28 and having my son at 32, I took the first opportunity, because if you don't take that first opportunity to sign that waiver and say, I want to be out, if you don't opt out that first time when they offer you, you don't have a chance to do it again. And I didn't want to be where, some other people I had seen too, they had to go to Korea. Your family can't go to Korea. There's places your family can't go. So you might be sent somewhere where your family can't even go for 2 years, 3 years. And at that time they were doing stop loss. They were doing, they had doctors in there like in their 80s that they weren't letting discharge and retire. So I took that opportunity to come home and be a stay-at-home mom as soon as they offered me. It was, and then my next duty station was going to be beautiful Kentucky, and I was like, oh, I really want to go, but no, I got to get out of here, man. I want to go. I want to be with my son.
Joe, what were some of the differences? Because I know you said you were single when you was in, but how did they treat the family when you were in?
Hmm. It's kind of hard for me to say. One, it was a entirely different military then.
Mm-hmm.
There were less women in combat units, and all the units that I was with were in combat. The only time you would see a woman would be at the hospital or a few places like that, because it wasn't like it is now. So it's kind of hard for me to talk about families and what they went through. I do know that I did see people that had families that were going through some financial problems because they did have children. I do remember a person that I was serving with, who had to get a part-time job just to make ends meet for his wife and child. It was hard for her, from what I understand, to get certain services at that time. But things have improved, for the military. Things
And
have improved.
you said something that I didn't even think about. Uh,
Mhm.
when I was in, we got like 5 or 6 pay raises to
Mm.
where now being in the military, you are like, they're doing a good job right now of trying to ensure that we are compatible with society. But when you were in during the Vietnam area, it was not so, Yeah, nowadays you got to break an arm and a leg for your leadership to allow you to get a secondary job because you're so committed to everything.
Yeah, that's true.
That's another big difference is the pay increase.
That's
It's
one of the reasons why I even went back on jump status when I came back to Vietnam, because at $55 that they were paying back then.
You said $55. They
That's
paid
what
He
it
y'all
said
was.
$55.
That's what it was then.
Yeah, we up to 150 now.
I think it's even a little higher than that, actually, isn't it?
But
Oh,
you know
really?
what? His $55 was probably more than your 150.
True that. True.
Well,
That
you
was
might have
probably
been able
like
to do
I
that was
more
think
with
it
probably
it.
is
like
a little. I
$400.
want to say it's like, isn't it like 175 or something?
Yeah, I think it's up there a little bit more
Yeah,
now. Yeah,
Mm.
all those
Oh
special
wow.
pays went up a little bit.
Oh
yeah.
wow.
Wow. Yeah, it was $55 for us. And
Mhm.
the only difference I think would be was the fact that back then, dollar stretched a little further.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
yeah, that's right. 55 in the late 60s and 70s is probably more than
way more.
200 today.
Yeah.
Another thing he hit on, he said that people had to get food stamps.
Yeah.
Now, before I got in, I did know of a friend of mine who did have to get food stamps while he
We,
was in the military, but
I,
that was maybe 10 years before I
I
went.
think we're doing better about that too. So even when I retired, you did have some junior soldiers, especially if it was, a single income couple, or maybe even up to a sergeant with a non-working spouse and 3 kids, you were qualifying. And the only speaking from experience, my son, he's now an E5, but he's as an E4. His wife did not work. They had a child, and they were making enough. They did not qualify for public assistance or anything. So I think even just in the past 10 years, I've seen that they've come a little bit better as far as making sure that family members are. I mean, obviously, got to manage your finances, but they can make their bills now. They're not below that level, which is
That's
good
good.
to
Yeah,
know.
I mean,
Another
one of
interesting thing, though, too, is that that you're saying this. We're all in the Army. If we
Right.
were in the Air Force, anybody who came to our base, if they had to live where we live, they would get a subsistence
Yeah,
allowance.
they get
Ain't that
So
additional.
that
crazy?
means they were living below the standard for the Air Force. So they would get extra money because they were living where we live.
Hmm.
Yep.
That's even in Vietnam, the Air Force lived better than the Army
Yes.
in Vietnam.
And they don't run as much. They only got to run like 1.5 miles. So,
Mm.
But I cut you off, Randy. I'm so sorry.
Oh no, I was just gonna say I worked as a command financial NCO for a while at the battalion level, so about 450 soldiers underneath my tutelage when it came to that. And yeah, we would have larger families where the spouse, it wasn't financially smart for them to work
Right.
because the cost of daycare for 4 or 5 kids
Yeah.
was 2 or 3 times what they could make. So we would have to help get them assistance. And those were special circumstances. But I remember, yeah, when I was a private in 2001, when I first came in, there was a lot of families that were getting assistance. And I think because of those increases where they're trying to make our pay comparable to the private sector, well, I guess I'm in the private sector now, but, I think that's what helped families move away from that. It's really hard, I'm sure, for the civilians and everybody that supports us, our fellow veterans, to look at somebody in the Army and go, you have to get on assistance even though you're doing what you're doing. Like, that'd be a hard pill for me as a parent to swallow if one of my children, like Kelly's, was in the Army. And I'm like, wait a minute, you don't make enough to survive defending our country. So I'm glad that we've progressed from Joe having to get a second job, right, and get back on jump status after Vietnam to be able to pay the bills. I'm kind of happy that we're progressing and taking care of our soldiers better.
Yeah.
There's a huge factor too with us being I'll say the word CONUS versus OCONUS. So being in the United States versus living in Germany, because
Right.
just me being pregnant, I had a 3-story house with two baths, and I don't know, 1, 2, 3, 4 bedrooms and stuff
Wow.
like that. And I didn't pay rent; it was housing. So how does that factor when you're in the U.S. when you're on U.S. soil? You're
It's the
do they
same.
give
You can
you
live in
a housing
housing.
allowance?
Yeah, and they take all of it, and that is something where the Army still hasn't gotten it quite right, in my opinion. And
Yeah.
because when my son first got married, he was a PFC, an E3, and his neighbor in the same duplex was a staff sergeant,
Hmm.
and that staff sergeant's all $1,200 of his money was going to the housing. My son was only getting 900, and they're both paying
Oh, wow.
the same,
Yeah.
like literally shared a wall. And I think
Yeah.
that's
Well,
something they still haven't really figured out, is the housing situation.
I
Ooh.
was in housing before they initiated that,
Hmm.
and it was the same, just looked at different. So
Right.
back then, and so they did two things in 2005. One, and all this was when they commercialized housing. One, what they did was they said now, because before then you were living close to your rank, close to your
Right.
peers.
It was right. It was
Yeah,
Everything
separated
was
by pay
blocked off.
grades.
Yeah.
yep, and by pay grade. There we go. And so when they went privatized, they said, "Well, we'll just put whoever with whoever."
Pick
So
your house as long.
before
I think, except for what is it? Field grades and above, I think, and
Sergeant
Yeah.
then
They
I
get
Major,
think
slotted
master
on
sergeants and above.
installation. Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah. So that's what they did with that. So back then, it was not that problem because I'm an E4 specialist. I'm living next to a sergeant, and we're not. It's not too much of a difference in pay,
Right.
not too much difference in house. So they commercialized it, and then they did away with majority of that. The other thing they did was before then, we never saw our housing allowance. When they
Right.
went commercialized, they showed it to us on our pay stub, which is hard to say, pay stub in the military. They showed it to us on our pay stub, but then right underneath it in the next column where it talk about our deductions and withdrawals, they showed us where they took it out. And I'm sure that has a psychological effect in it
Yeah.
because now you know what's being like. If you didn't, like, you can't miss what you don't see.
Yeah.
Right.
That you see
You're
it
right.
on,
It's a mentally it's different.
yeah,
And and the other thing too is with them taking the entire housing allowance just for the rent, it doesn't make sense. My son bought a house as a 21-year-old private PFC, using his VA home loan. But he bought a house, 3 bedroom, 2 bathroom, nothing crazy. It was like $230 less than his rent on post was. So I
And
mean,
maybe that's the encouragement. You got the
you
money,
would
go
think
do it.
so.
I don't know.
I don't know what's going on with
well,
the housing thing.
the benefit, and they were changing this when I moved off post, and I didn't hear too much of a difference before I retired. But the benefit so far has always been not the rent, but the utilities.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That was when I first came in. When I first got into housing, you didn't pay anything for utilities,
But
and
some of them are privatized now. So if
right,
you go over a certain electrical cap,
It,
now
it's
you're
it's
paying. And if you have 3 or 4 stay-at-home children, especially during COVID,
yep.
right? And your
yeah,
spouse is there and everybody's virtually learning and you're going through that cap, is it really worth it? Because you get that, we'll say $200 buffer, right? So maybe you're paying another 75. But if you go buy a house like Kelly's son and you were saving $200 on rent, where's the balance point?
I
And
think
I'm
I
sure it's
think
different for every family.
he ended up coming out like with all his utilities, everything including the mortgage. I think he was about $120 more to buy a house.
But he's building equity,
Right.
right?
Right.
He's building wealth in his
And he
own
ended up
right.
and he ended up selling it and made like within I hate to say this, but Sergeant, 82nd Airborne, get married, you have a kid, you're going to get divorced within 3 years.
Yeah, it's
I mean,
fine.
you got to check the block, right? But so he sold the house, but he did. He made like $40,000 on it. Like,
that's
you
a
can't go
good
wrong with that.
that's a good way in right there. Talking about
Oh.
being in the 82nd, which is in
Mhm.
Fort Bragg, the sacrifices that we had to make.
Mm-hmm.
Like, even though Joe and First Lady, y'all were not, had too much of a family when you first came in or when you were in, and Kelly, when you first came in, you were single. You still had to afford some sacrifices. Maybe not to your children or your spouse, but what about to your mom and your siblings?
Oh yeah.
So let's talk about the sacrifices that one. And I'm gonna start off by saying the one thing, the first lesson you always learn with family is when not to go home, because everybody wants you, like, you leave now, everybody wants you to pay to come home and then visit everybody while you're home.
Yes, it's
And
crazy.
so yeah, that's one of the first, I think, one of the first lessons that you learn, that sometimes you just got to say no.
Yep. I grew up really close with my cousins. Like, we all grew up in the same neighborhood, and you're exactly right. When I joined the Army, I would come home. My first duty station was Germany, and I came home, and everybody's like, "Well, when you come to see me? When you come to see me? When you come?" I'm here. I literally traveled across the world.
Right.
You can come to my mom's house if you can't do that. And what's sad is because I didn't make that extra effort to schedule to see each one of my cousins and whatever. I've lost touch with them,
Yeah.
and it really sucks. Like, I'm close with my sister. She actually moved here to North Carolina, and my mom, because after 25 years of being gone, it's kind of like, I see you on social media, but if I wasn't making the effort wasn't made. And I think that happens to a lot of military folks. When you're gone for so long, they just want you, like, you just live around the corner. No, they don't get the travel, how much time, the money, to get there.
I have a quick question for you. When I was in the military, Fort Bragg, 82nd Airborne, when I was in 17th Cav, 90% of the time that I was there, we were out in the field working with the 3rd Special Forces Group, training them. Now, we just talked about, somebody mentioned about their son and 3 years divorce. Does being in the field now, training people, does that present a problem for you all in terms of marital problems?
Yeah, so I'll only speak for the field artillery community. So we train a lot. We go out to the field. We have semi-annual certifications, and because we're so connected as a society, right? We have cell phones and we have social media. You're away without being away sometimes, and that creates its own friction points. Because if I have a soldier who's scrolling TikTok or he's on Facebook Messenger and his significant other sees him, but he hasn't answered a text, it's are you really training? And then it's undermining what the unit is doing, because the next time they come to a meeting to discuss upcoming events for the unit, they're like, well, my husband last time he was in the field was playing on social media, and then everybody gets yelled at, and then that's an additional stressor. So I think training as a whole is good, but I don't think training that we're doing now is as rigorous as what you did back then. Not even close.
I think I have to recant on my statement. And I have to tell you something, because I don't know why it just didn't even dawn on me, but I had just got married before I joined. And when I went to basic training, for some reason, my sergeants didn't allow us to make phone calls but once a week, and we had to do 5 minutes. And then some weeks we would skip. And so for my brand new spouse, there was things that were happening at home where I'm like, nope, just keep focused. This is like summer school. Just focus. And if you just focus on the goal, everything will be fine, right? Now, mind you, I thought my after basic training was over, I thought my AIT school was 6 weeks. When I got the orders to go 2 days before, I found out it was 6 months. So 6 months that I had to go to Texas to be at Fort Sam. Then 6 months I had to go to Georgia. So AIT, for a certain amount of time, you're unaccompanied, but the being newly married, the ball had already started rolling because when I initially came in, when I first signed the papers in October, I was not married. March, I was married. There was this big breakdown of the pay. So then, things got behind at home. And then there was communication. And then by then it was just like this avalanche of, you know, the person not really understanding what was happening. And I mean, we basically, by the time I got to AIT, it was over. Like our new marriage was over by then.
Wow. And what is AIT again?
Oh,
Advanced individual training. It's
right. So that's so basically we're going to basic training to learn how to be a soldier, period.
Yeah.
At AIT, you're learning how to do your job.
Right.
So I was learning to be a medical lab technician. I didn't know that it was 1 year training bouncing around, and a portion of it would be unaccompanied. Some people sent for their spouses, but by the time it was time, I mean, not to say that it totally destroyed my marriage, but it was tainted because those phone calls, not being able to call every day and barely being able to call once a week and for 5 minutes. I really don't know why my unit decided to do that at what is it, Fort Jackson?
That's how it was. I mean,
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
know I came in a little before you. I was 96. On Sundays, you marched the phones.
Y'all must have been in Bravo with me then. Y'all must have been in Bravo.
I came in 90 and it was the same way then. Once a week. But I understand that
for a new marriage. That's for people who've been together, but for a brand new marriage, it was like,
yeah.
But you know what? I'm not gonna blame that on the military because I'm gonna blame that on the person.
I was just gonna say a lot of times it does come down to the people. So my first, not 96, we didn't have cell phones, obviously, and my first deployment was Bosnia, but it was 1997. I think I just gotten an email address, maybe. we didn't have.
I need to have somebody younger on here now.
Huh?
I need to have somebody younger on here now because
I know we're all right.
Well, hey, I had cell phones. We had cell phones not in basic, but
I feel like it wasn't.
You weren't supposed to in 2003, but some people had them. They hit them up in the season.
Now they have them.
Yeah, now they have them.
But what I was gonna say is, it was almost less stress. And I saw it on both sides because all the way up to 2000, in 2010, I had internet in my little tiny hooch in my room, excuse me. And we were in a really remote area, but we'd been there so long, like our forward surgical team bought a satellite dish. So I went from making a phone call every 2 weeks using the last four of my social security number for a free phone call to the States in 1997 to in 2010, I could sit there in my PT my PT uniform and call them from my computer. So sometimes for us, I was a little older, but I think sometimes it causes more problems than it helps. Randy, you make a great point. I mean, it causes problems when you're that accessible, and that's when you have spouses calling units, and you have all this unnecessary drama. Whereas I was one of those people because I was old school, I guess. When we went to the field, no, I don't want to see your phone until if you're in your cot at night, get on your phone. But if we're training, I don't want to see it because it is such a distraction and it causes that expectation for that family member that's not always going to be there.
Right.
Yeah, they have that instant lifeline almost, Right. When I went to the field as a young soldier, if my bills weren't paid, my wife couldn't call the commander and be like, hey, I needed to come out of the field to go pay the electric bill. They had to figure it out,
Yeah.
And now soldiers don't have that. Their spouses are calling the commander for every little thing. I got a flat tire, or I didn't buy formula and I don't have access to the bank account. We're not setting our families up.
I planned my son's 3rd birthday party from Afghanistan through Amazon.com. I swear I did. So that you have that type of accessibility as opposed to when if I had a family even in 2004 when I was in Iraq, again, didn't have a family, but I had obviously people in my unit that did, and it was a problem communicating back and forth with money and finances, and it just wasn't so automated. So
Well, Joe, you had something, and then we got a question I got in the audience. So, Joe.
Yeah, I was going to say, when I was in, you have to remember now, this was before the all voluntary service. We had drafts, and you enlisted. When I was in basic training, you were not allowed to make phone calls home for the first 4 weeks, 1 month. You could not do that. And back then, they could put their hands on you, and they did put their hands on you.
Yes.
It was an entirely different army than what it is right now. I'm just listening to you talk about the problems that you had, and we never had those problems because we never had any of those opportunities.
Distractions. Yeah, a lot of the technology that we have now, and those of us that were senior leaders, a lot of technologies that we had were major distractions. I remember sitting in the post sergeant major's meeting, and we was finna do post cleanup, and one of the things he specifically said was, when I ride around Fort Bragg, I do not want to see soldiers that are supposed to be cleaning up, standing on the side of the road on their cell phone looking like construction workers. He specifically said that. So we do have a question on the floor. Hold on, First Lady. We do have a question on the floor, and the question is, does the military explain or train you, and she's talking to us, to relay the ways you all are allowed to communicate to your family or spouses? And would that make a difference? I think
No.
I think we all got
If I didn't even know where I was going to be deployed, and I don't know where I'm going to school, I don't even know how long my school is. No, they're not going to tell you anything to help your family out. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
So there's programs that exist now, right?
Yeah.
So as the Army evolves, so do a lot of the programs. So some of that stuff exists. The problem is soldiers are so busy day in and day out that they can't get time away. You know, if I was married and had young children and my spouse was a civilian, if she's the one that's in charge of running the household, who's going to run it so she can get this training? Who's going to run it so she can go to a class to help her understand how we're training, why we're training the way we are, how to communicate effectively in short bursts over a text or an email? Those things exist, but the barrier happens to be how fast the Army moves and how needed each soldier is.
Yeah.
And we can say that too, but I also know, like, people as civilians have communication problems. It's also the people that we choose. And I was going to tell you, I know you've seen this, especially dudes in the Navy. They want to be married and they want to have a family, and they just marry someone, and that person has to be a strong, special person, because you got to be able to, what if my neighbors don't communicate with me and they don't like me? Can you survive being in the home alone? Are you able to take care of your kids by yourself? Are you a person who is financially responsible? Because a lot of spouses are at home, and you get your check and you come home and you're like, damn, you didn't save no money and you behind on the bills. So it also belongs to who we chose to marry, what kind of person we chose to marry. Are they a strong person who could survive? Did you pick a person who just wanted to be married and have kids, or somebody, because you're in the military, did you pick somebody who just wanted you to take care of them? Because a lot of the drama comes from the people that you're married, and you done brought somebody in here who, Lisa is the trip. You know what I'm saying? And Lisa's crazy. And she's like, I don't know how to do nothing. I thought we was gonna be, you know what I mean? Like, I saw a lot of guys that married women, and I'm like, woo, be careful who you choose. So it's a lot, because it's not just the military and their standards, it's also the people that we brought into the situation.
So it's also a well, let's say communication. Let me give you a story. When I first joined the military, I was single. I did 3 years. I got out. I got married. I came back in. And when I came back in, my wife stayed in South Carolina for 6 months, and then she came out to Fort Campbell, where I was. And so I think I got my stories mixed up. But either way, I'm going to keep going because it's going to make sense in a minute. But I was finna go. No, it was after I came back from Korea. That's right. So I took her home after I left Fort Hood. I went to Korea. She went to South Carolina, and then after we came back from South Carolina, from Korea, that's when we went to Fort Campbell. When we got to Fort Campbell, she stayed there for another 2 months, so I get housing situated. So once I got into housing, I went and got my wife. Okay. During the process of her and I communicating, her and I talking, I ended up getting selected to go to PLDC, Primary Leaders Development Course, the course that we
Mm.
to become a sergeant. And her and I were planning, okay, baby, this is a 30-day training. I'm gonna be fully engaged. And we're talking. And she's new to the area, she's new to the house. I got everything set up, and we're talking and we're planning this out. And she's got a job lined up and everything. And then after talking for 2 weeks, I'm on my way home to pick her up, and she asked me a question that I had never thought about that changed the whole dynamic of the cold conversation. She said, "Well, what time will you be getting home every day?"
Whoa.
And I said, "Oh, I'm sorry. I just assumed, because in the military, we assume everybody knows how it works, but our spouses don't."
Oh, they all not.
Yeah, she did not. And I had to say, "Well, I won't be coming home. I will be there for the entire 30 days. I will not be coming home." And so in that
Oh
case,
my God.
yep, in that case, it was a communication area, because what I understood, I assumed she understood, and there was no way that she would understand it had I not told her.
Wow.
To kind of answer the question my way is, yeah, we do have that training and that stuff, but then a lot of times we take it for granted that everyone knows. And so in my case, it turned out good because I ended up going to school and everything worked out, but I know that put a strain on my wife for 30 days.
Yeah.
Being new to the area, new house, and back then, no cell phones, and there were 4 pay phones that everybody runs to. So no telling, and you only had a 2-hour block to use the phone.
Yeah.
So I'm calling home every 3-4 days late at night. When she's not late at night, but like at the end of the evening when she's getting ready to go to bed for work the next day.
Yeah.
And I think people don't understand too. You have become the property of the United States military. So you're the property of, and so our job is not like 9 to 5. It's 24/7. So if they say we stay in here all day, lottie dottie, everybody, like they say, that's it. You're here. I'm gonna be here all day, all night until somebody tells me to go. That's it.
Yeah.
One thing I will say about the communication thing, I noticed again over the course of years, the I would say after about 7-8 years of being in war, we did get a lot better about it. If you guys remember, right? We actually did give soldiers training. This is how you need to communicate with your spouse when you go home, to prevent all of these marital issues, to prevent this miscommunication. And we did encourage and look, make a weekly phone call home. Don't call them constantly. We did eventually get there. As far as kind of formalized training. And this other thing I was wondering is, like, which is harder? Is it dual military or is it being married to a civilian? Honestly, my opinion, married to a civilian is way harder.
I
did one of each. Right?
So
and I will say that my wife is a blessing for many, many reasons, but a big chunk of that is her service as well. Because we'll have miscommunications because her service was different, right? Her experience as a female engineer is different than mine as a male field artillery NCO, non-commissioned officer. But we know that we're probably both missing the point sometimes. And sometimes it sounds like we're having an argument, but we're just really diving in and digging in to find out that information instead of taking it surface level. My first wife would take everything surface level and just kind of run with it, and it'd be the completely wrong thing to do. But now, because we both know that we don't know, we actually have conversations and we make sure and try to check for understanding, create our own little feedback loops of like, okay, what does that mean to you? because in the artillery community, this is what it means. But in the engineer community, this is what it means. And then especially as I became a senior NCO after she was medically retired, there was a lot of firsts for both of us, because moving from like that middle level leader to a senior leader, there's a lot of dynamic changes in what's expected of you, what's expected of your family. That's really kind of unspoken. My wife is supposed to act a certain way because she's a sergeant first class's wife, which to her, she's like, I'm a veteran. I served, I deployed, I'm medically retired. You'll get some of that. Right. So,
I had the same issue. My ex-husband, he was medically retired as well, but we both did 21, but there was 4 years that he was retired and I was in, and I was a detachment sergeant. I was, everybody expects the team sergeant's spouse to be in the FRG. And he's like, yeah, no, I'm a retired Green Beret. I'm not going.
FRG? What is it? FRG?
Oh, Family Readiness Group. I'm so sorry.
Oh, family
See,
readiness.
my wife was the savior of every junior enlisted soldier because they knew
and mine
if they could get to her, she would ask the command team the hard questions. Because she wouldn't take no. She wouldn't take well, that's the way we do it. That's the Army thing. Because she knew regulations. She knew what the Army wanted. So there was no, like she was the hero. Like people loved her when she went to those meetings because they'd be like,
I think
Miss Erika, can I ask you a question? So, yeah, her name's Erika too. Sorry. It's a good name. It's a good name.
Yeah. So the Army
with a K or a C?
It's with a C.
Okay, we'll let her slide. We'll let her slide. Okay.
I'll let her know that you gave her a pass.
Okay, thanks. It's still a strong name. She must be she's equally tenacious. So.
Oh.
I know.
Yeah, tenacious is putting it lightly.
Yeah.
So we're doing it. Now here's the thing. Now we're talking about the Army, and I know every other branch has their own issues when you're talking about dealing with the family, their own sacrifices, their own benefits. But the interesting thing about, as I listen to this panel discussion, we still are showing the diversity in the Army.
Mm-hmm.
You have two that were not married. Yeah, two that were not married, one that started single, one that was dual military, one with, it's just, even in these dynamics, it shows the strain that it takes, being in the military. It's a strain on the family. So let's see, what is the biggest sacrifice that you say you made for your family? And this includes, parents, cousins, mom, dad, brother, sister. It could include holiday events, funeral reunion. Like, what do you feel like was the biggest sacrifice that you made for your country against your family?
I think it goes back to Kelly's point earlier, right? Because she came from a family with a lot of cousins that everybody was local. We used to have big family events. Everybody was local. Even when I go home, everybody's still there. I think the biggest overall sacrifice was that family community that was there on standby. We're in Oklahoma. It's my wife and I and the kids.
Right.
My sister-in-law just had her first daughter, and, the mother-in-law is there. The grandparents are there. Everybody's there to help support her in raising, my niece. Mm-hmm. We didn't have that, or we did virtually through telephone calls or an email here and there, but I don't think it's the same of having that family community to help raise our family. I think that was our biggest sacrifice.
I agree. You lose that your extended family sometimes when you move away. And what's interesting, since my son saw that and experienced it, my oldest son, he's doing everything in his power to stay at Fort Bragg. His son was born here. His son's mother's here. We're here. Even changing MOSs. He's like, I'm staying on jump status. Can I get back to division?
MOS?
I'm sorry, his job, changing his job. Yeah. And I was worried they weren't going to, because he had a surgery. But so now, fortunately, we're at Fort Bragg, a place where, in a small field that he's in with the airborne identifier, hopefully he can stay here so he can have that extended family, because he's got custody of his son. So if he leaves, all of that all my grandson's family is here.
Yeah.
So we're hoping he doesn't have to experience that same thing.
Yeah.
It's tough.
Well, for me, I was lucky enough when my uncle passed away, and they had one funeral that I was able to take the time off to go. And wear my uniform with everyone else who had their uniform on. That was like the best. My uncle had like the 21 gun salute. My aunts and my cousins, everybody, we got to wear our uniforms. I was so proud to be a part of that. But in the meantime, like all the good stuff that they had, all the reunions that they had, I missed so many reunions. Like 2 years being
Oh yeah.
in Germany, I didn't get to come home for any of those birthday parties, reunions, and then I think people just kind of get used to people get used to you not being available. So they
Mm-hmm.
just
Stop
don't work.
asking.
They don't bother you anymore. They're like,
Yep.
oh, she's gone. She's not here. That's too far. And they start thinking for you whether
Yeah.
they can invite you to stuff or not.
Yep. They decide whether or not you want to know if somebody's sick.
Right.
They're like,
Oh,
oh, we don't want to bother you.
People are sick. They won't tell you.
Or if they pass. I almost had that happen.
Yeah.
I had my mom one day. I called home, and when I was younger, there was Aunt Rose, and Aunt Rose was you know Aunt Rose, don't you, Joe?
She was the only aunt that wrote me when I was in Vietnam.
Oh wow!
my
Oh, for the
goodness.
record, y'all don't know this, but Joe is relative of mine. So
Okay.
yeah, but so here I am. I did my 3 years. I got out, and I'm talking to mom one day, and I was like, Mom, where's Aunt Rose? I haven't seen her in a while. And she just so easily said, oh, she passed away. And I'm like, wait a minute, hold on.
Yeah.
She passed away while I was in Desert Storm, and they decided, like you said, they made a decision for me not to let me know that she passed away. So it had been about 4 or 5 years by the time I found out that she had passed away.
Mm.
Yeah. I miss Aunt Rose. I'm gonna leave it at that.
I do too.
Yeah.
For me, missing the holidays.
Yeah.
Like Warren just said, we're relatives. I have 48 first cousins. That's just first cousins. There were 12 of my father had 11 sisters and brothers. So when I was younger, they brought us together on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we got together at least 2 or 3 times a year as a large family, and sometimes smaller groups would get together. So when I was not around, I missed it. I missed the holidays. Christmas of 1970, I'm in a hole, you know, and thinking about my family. They back home drinking, partying, and enjoying themselves. So that was my biggest dilemma in terms of my family, missing them.
Yeah. I think that the one thing that we appreciate when we finally get out, regardless if it's our time is up, well, either way, our time is up, but either we volunteered to get out after a few years or we made it all the way to retirement. I think there's a newfound appreciation for family when you get out. I think you see more of, because one of the things that we adopt in the military, I strongly believe in the cliche, it takes a village to raise a child. So when you're in it's like I think it was Kelly that said all her family was, no, it was Randy. One of y'all said all your family was right there in that area. And so when you move away, you have to build that village. You have to build that family. And because we're all of the same common bond, it makes it somewhat easier, but it's not the same, you know, when you got to look at your platoon sergeant or a guy you met or a girl you met at school and y'all hit it off real well and she has children and she needs some help. And so now y'all work together to go pick each other's child up. It's not the same, but that's the life of the military.
But is that goes to kind of what you guys, you and Randy both, right, with the resiliency thing and how you learn to adapt. So a friend of mine that I serve with, she and her husband are both majors. I've been their short-term family care plan since the month I retired.
Yeah.
And then, I worked with a veteran whose wife is active duty at my last job. And, the wife is pregnant. They have 2 children. They don't have any family here either. So again, I'm the short-term family care plan. And it's always just that military relationship. And you really do depend on those people. It becomes family. That you talk about family, military folks become your family.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't think people understand, like, yeah, I know I just met you 6 months ago. We have a great bond. I know you just got out of the military. Can you be my family care plan? Like, I trust you.
Yeah.
And it happens. And I don't think anybody else in their right mind would think that that's okay, but we do it.
Yeah, that is something that amazes a lot of people, how we can meet somebody so quick, have to do a character assessment so quick, and make the decision. Is this person worthy to pick my kids up from school? Go by the house and while I'm on vacation and
Feed my
let the dog
dogs.
out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We do it. Giving people
Yeah, but
clothes
those are the
warm.
lifelong bonds that we build, right?
Yeah.
Like the house that we live in now, I bought as a specialist when my first daughter was about to be born. My best friend, one of my best friends now, lived 3 blocks away. I was a specialist. He was a PFC. He joined. He already had 3 kids. I'm on my first one. Like I said, I'm alone. I don't have any family. He would come up the road when my daughter was cranky in the middle of the night, because he's 6'5". He's just a massive mammoth of a man. And he would just hold her, pat her on the back, and hum, and she would fall asleep, right? But, you got to trust somebody with your brand new infant.
Yeah.
And we've been best friends since 2005, right? We go out and see each other. We talk all the time, So I might not have had my organic family, but I pieced it together, right? I got brothers and sisters across the nation, across the world, because I found a gap and I adapted, and I brought those people into my life, and I'm not letting them go.
At this point, I can go even, longer, not speaking to a fellow veteran or somebody I served with, and reconnect with them faster than I would ever than the cousins that I grew up with. Because you don't want to say that you don't know each other. My family back home doesn't know me anymore. I'm not the same person I was when I left 25 years ago. Right. I'm not the person they think I am. And you just they're never going to learn exactly what happened in 25 years. Military folks get it because they've gone through those same.
Yeah, right.
You will learn that at graduation when you get done with basic training, when you're visit, because they warn you. They was like, look, because when we say, close ranks, or that it's time to be quiet, you're gonna notice like your family is undisciplined and your family is different. And when they come to graduate, you're like, dang, the man said, shut up, be quiet. You don't know how to act. You know what I mean? Like, you start looking at your family different. Like, no, they're a little bit different, y'all, because you don't become this disciplined person. And man, I'm not gonna lie, I just love graduation because I love that marching. I love that music. I love that. I loved it. Like, oh, look, I can do this. Left, right. Oh, like,
I wish I had that experience in basic training, Erika.
I
did not enjoy not 1 minute of it until they said get on the bus and leave, and I was like, yes.
Oh, really?
Oh, I hated it.
I love marching.
I was out of shape. I had a bad attitude that they were really working on.
That's the only time I know my left from my right, girl. I'm telling you. Is when I'm in that formation. I'm like, shoot, put your weapon over your shoulder. I don't know why I like drill and ceremony, but I like it a lot. I could watch it. I could listen to it.
I like calling cadence. I don't know about drill and ceremony.
I like drill and ceremony so much. I volunteer with the drill team at the local high school here. Yes. Yep. I love it. Nice. So this has been a great conversation. Oh, go ahead, Joe. I want to cut you off.
And you have one too.
Just quickly, I was platoon guy the whole time I was going through basic training. And on the day of graduation, my Sergeant Mapp came to me and said, "You did a very good job as being platoon guy. Now I'm going to teach you humility. You have KP for the day."
Oh, wow.
I had KP on graduation day. I
Oh
couldn't
my
march.
goodness.
One more. Come on, squeeze one more in there, Warren.
Hold on. Tell us what KP is, Joe.
Oh, I'm sorry. Kitchen patrol.
Because as a
Working-
platoon guy, you didn't have to do it, right?
And people need to
No.
know how powerful you have to be with a platoon guy. So while everybody else is marching, you got to run around the whole unit. While they marching, you running around the whole unit with a flag. What? That's a bad man right there. That's a bad man right there.
Airborne.
Sir. Yes, sir.
Well, it's been such. Erika, did
No,
you
no,
have
no.
one?
One
Go ahead.
more. This
Go
is
ahead,
how much I liked it. Let me tell you, if you leave your sock under a pillow, they'll rip your whole bunk up, right?
Yes.
My closet was perfection, you understand. I know how to fold my stuff. I know how to line my stuff up. I went to the bathroom and left my thing unlocked. That man threw everybody's stuff into the middle of the floor. Then he
Look at
said,
all us shaking our heads like, no,
I
you
could hear
didn't.
him when I was in the bathroom. I'm telling you, I'm on the toilet. I said, oh, shit. By the time when I came out, they said, tell Simmons she had a nice locker and she can show y'all how to do yours. But he ripped my stuff apart and I was still pumped. I was just like, damn. Like the stuff that they do, it's funny, man. I still liked it though.
Yeah,
Because I was
good
like,
training.
yeah, my stuff was the best.
Raise your hand if it happened to you. It's all right.
Oh, no.
It didn't happen to you.
Oh,
I'm telling you what, because I was on fire guard for 4 hours a night for about 6 weeks. So I had all the
you
time in
had
the world to
time.
prepare.
Oh
But
yeah.
Yeah,
this
I
was
got in
me
trouble.
stepping away because I had to go to the bathroom. I went in there, went to the bathroom, boom, he caught me slipping.
Oh no.
Threw all my stuff.
I was
down.
too scared. I'm telling you, I got in trouble my first week and learned my lesson fast, quick, and in a hurry.
Yeah, me too. That's when my stuff was tossed. It was week 1. I was good after that.
Oh, and I
Mine
yelled at my squad leader.
got tossed
Yeah, I
in.
learned.
Mine got tossed in AIT when I was learning my job. That's the bad part. I was good in basic training, but in AIT, I had to go cross post to go see my girlfriend, and I was running late, and I was gonna be gone all day. And when I came back at about 10 o'clock at night, yeah, I had to put everything back together.
It's like that dog. You said, who the hell left the gate open?
Right.
Who the hell
But we
left
could
the
talk
gate
about stuff all day.
I know we're gonna have to do another one just to talk about this stuff. That's
I know,
great.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's been great. This has been a good conversation. It's just the biggest thing that we've seen is how much the Army has done a great job of supporting families. And Kelly brought up a great point. The war actually helped that. The war forced us as leaders to really drill down and look at how are we taking care of our families. So it's been a great conversation. I do thank you all for volunteering your time. I thank you for volunteering your life, and I thank you for volunteering. Joe, I don't know, were you volunteered or were you voluntold?
No, I joined. I volunteered to go.
Okay, so we thank you all because I do. There is a guy here at my church. When we talk about volunteer for the Army, he feels a little something in his heart because he didn't volunteer; he got drafted. So and that is a bigger difference. So, but I do say, even though we're a little behind the holiday, happy Veterans Day. Thank you for your service.
Same to you all.
Your time.
Thank you. Thank you
And
all.
it has been great. So what we're going to do now is going to go around and just close out, give us some final remarks, and if anything that you would like to promote or say, go ahead and let us know. And then once you finish, just say goodnight, and then we'll close the show out, starting with Joe.
All right. On December the 4th, 2021, hoping to get 500 to 1,000 of the public to come through. Everybody's welcome to come through. If you're in the area, please come up. It's going to be in one of our churches. You're going to enjoy what you see, and you're going to enjoy the music that's being played, also by another vet. This whole thing is being done by veterans. December the 4th.
All right. Thank you, Joe. You have a good night.
Good night, everybody.
Erika.
Now, this is the First Lady Erika. What I would say is, a lot of times people's families are afraid. They're like, no, don't go to the military because you could die. And, the thing I told my mom was like, I could die on this interstate. I can't be afraid to live my life. So if it's something that you want to do and you're passionate about, you can find ways to make this a positive experience. Um, you can get an education. You can learn about finances. You can, learn a trade, anything, you know, to get out of just an empty life. But that's if you want to. Like, I wouldn't go and tell people's kids like you should do this, but if it's something that you see that could get you out of a dark place, like the other gentleman was saying, living broke, busted, and disgusted, you can get stability there. And it was the beginning of me finding my own identity in this world. So I appreciate it. And I'm the First Lady Erika. You can find me on my Linktree. So Linktree at the First Lady Erika. And I have products on there, books on there, things that I'm doing. And a lot of that was because of the self-esteem that I gained from being in the military, the education, the free education I got from being in the military, um, learning to be around new and different people, being able to travel to a different country. So I'm very grateful. And I just want you all to have a great evening and just enjoy your life and be the change that you want to be. Like the rest of these people, they all have a purpose. So find your purpose and find your place in life.
Well, thank you very much, Erika. It's been great to have you on here. And next we will have Randy.
Well, thank everybody for joining in and watching, supporting veterans. Most communities have tons of veterans in them, so you're never really that far from a veteran. So reach out, help stay connected to veterans. Other veterans, reach out to each other, right? Let's end the stigma of getting help. Make sure we're lowering that 22 a day average, and seek out your local VFW, your local VFW auxiliary. There's tons of programs that I would urge you to look into. They really do host a lot of things that build your community behind the scenes that people aren't aware of. Have a good night.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And last but not least, Kelly.
I think one thing I would just like to say is don't ever underestimate what you've really learned in the Army. You learn things, the personalities that you just don't get that education anywhere else. And I did want to mention it's not my organization. I do sit on the board of a nonprofit, the Special Operations Care Fund, but I want to mention the GWAT Memorial Foundation. My son's father is former president, and a lady I served with, Marina Jackman's the current president and CEO. And we're working to build a memorial for this 20-year war, not just for those that passed away, but for those of us that served. My family's multi-generational. I'm not the only one. And our family members and our veterans need a place to heal. So please check out the GWAT Memorial Foundation and support the efforts.
Thank you for
Thank
coming.
you.
Well, this has been a great, very informative show. There was really not enough that we can say. We could have did another 30, 45 minutes on the impact of the family and the military. One thing that we all agreed upon, even with the Vietnam vet, that the military has done a much better job of family. The biggest thing right now in the military is the family. And again, we had 4 Army vets on here. So granted, there's probably going to be some differences if there were other branches on here. I didn't try to exclude the other branches. Nobody responded. So we'll do this again next year. And if you are a vet, I do want to say thank you for your service. And everyone that watched, thank you for your time. This is Warren, Mr. Bowtie Feaster. Another episode of Let's Talk Family. When you're here, your family. And I always like to end with my 3 points of interest. 1, the center of everything is family. 2, be the best you that you can be. And 3, It's called life. Live it. Have a great day.